Hello, this is Mr. Reiner. Today we're doing Canada's challenges on September 22nd, 2020. All right, so objectives. Today I will, let's please read this together like we talked about before. Learn about Canada's challenges. Ready? Let's start over, okay? 3, 2, 1. Today I will learn about Canada's challenges. So I can, and there are two here, see the causes and effects of problems facing other countries and apply it to my own life in my country. I will know I have it when I can tell my friends and family two problems Canada is facing right now. Okay, shall we continue? All right, so first of all, we have this activity. It's a Cyphers activity. So your teacher is going to split you up into two groups and hand you a piece of paper with a secret code on it, okay? There's an alphabet at the top. You need to take your code and decode it into a secret phrase. So there are two sentences there. One of them is going to tell you what your code word is, and the other one is going to tell you what your secret action is, okay? When you get those two solved, throughout the rest of the day, as you hear those words, you need to do your secret action every time you hear that word, okay? So let's continue. What defines Canada? So different things we can say here, but first of all, we'll talk about the regions, and mostly we're talking about, remember, the challenges or the kind of the political problems or whatever. So when we talk about different regions, each region kind of identifies with itself more than it does other regions, and in some ways, these regions of Canada will start to compare themselves with each other. So we have the Maritimes, which maritime sounds like a good old time, like a merry old time, but no, it actually just means like the ocean, anything having to do with the ocean. Maritime, it's a adjective. But when we talk about maritimes in Canada, we're talking about these provinces over here. So we got Newfoundland, Labrador, Prince Edward Island, Nova Scotia, and I don't think New Brunswick counts as that, but it's close to it. Then we have East Canada, which is, for the most part, we're talking about Ontario and Quebec. Then we have the prairies, which would be kind of Saskatchewan and Manitoba. And then we have West Canada, which is Alberta, British Columbia, kind of. And then Arctic Canada, which would be up here. Okay, oops. Also, don't forget, Canada has two official languages. So in general, people in Quebec and New Brunswick speak French, although there are plenty of people who speak English, but I believe it's the majority in both provinces. Oh no, it's the majority in Quebec, but it's a near majority in New Brunswick. And then we have most of the rest of the country, for the most part, speaks English, at least officially. Of course, plenty of immigrant communities that will speak their own language, but it is a requirement, like as a visa requirement in Canada, to speak one of the two languages. Whereas that's not the case in the US because we do not have an official language. You can speak whatever language you want in the United States. All right, so some interesting things about that, and we talked about this last week a little bit in my class anyway. The bottles, right, for or any kind of packaging has to be in both English and French, and it has to be, the font has to be the exact same, and the size of the text has to be the same in both languages. So you can see here we have smooth and sleek, and then we have lisse et lustre, and I don't know why the person took this picture from the side. But anyway, everything that you find on here will be in both languages just like that, okay? The only exception would be words that are the same in both languages and words that are like a name for something, okay? Another cereal box. This is the different flavor of Shreddies than we had last week, but you can take a look at that. And then also road signs, of course, and these are some kind of newfangled color road sign screens that they just released in Ontario apparently, but you can see how they have both English and French. All right, there was also a survey done that I found where they asked a bunch of people, what defines Canada? Canadians, obviously, they asked Canadians. So, for example, the maple leaf, and that's on their flag, and I think that was by a landslide, was the symbol of Canada, according to the survey. They have hockey, the Canadian flag, the beaver. Remember that the beavers were what the Europeans were wanting to buy from the Native Americans, the pelts, the fur, in order to make hats and different things. So that's really closely tied to the history as well. Canada arm, and I didn't know what this was, but I looked it up, and it's this arm on, I believe, the International Space Station, that some kind of robotic arm. And that these are in order, so 1, 2, 3, 4. This is number 5. Number 5 thing that Canadians identify with. And that's one thing I've always found interesting about a lot of other countries. They tend to really value science, like Australia, a lot of European countries, Canada. From what I've seen, and even in Japan in some ways, like people they put on their money, a lot of times will be scientists or writers. Whereas in the US, we have our political founders, right? People who created our country. Let's see here. Canada Day, which is kind of like our Independence Day. There we go. The Canada Peacekeeping Forces, which we learned about yesterday. Pierre Elliott Trudeau, which happens to be the father of the current Prime Minister, but Pierre Trudeau, or PET, P-E-T, was a really well-respected Prime Minister. And the thing that kind of brings him and his son, the current Prime Minister, the thing that makes him so popular is that, for the most part, it's because they come from Quebec, right? So they're French and English-speaking Canadians. So they appeal to both that kind of East Canada, West Canada, large majorities that we're talking about here. Then we have universal healthcare. So Canada has free healthcare for its citizens. I don't know all the details about it, but the way I understand it is that it's completely free to use. You can use as much as you want, and there can sometimes be a wait for certain services. Niagara Falls, which I believe this is the US side, and I think this is the Canadian side, but I'm actually not sure. But anyway, yep, that's what Niagara Falls looks like. So that was the number 10 thing that defines Canada. Okay, so here's my Canada, and this is where we're going to start getting into sort of the challenges side. Voici mon Canada, and my French is terrible, so probably said it wrong. But anyway, let's take a look at the video. Oh, it's actually, yeah, so it's a channel. So basically, they ask for these video submissions to define Canada. What's Canada? What is your Canada? Was the idea. It's kind of been a few years ago now, but you would win $10,000, and you can see how everything is in English first, and then.
So here's a question: what does Canada mean to me?
Mom, let's go.
No.
What's the supper? Okay.
What is Canada to me? It's a place where you can visit a beautiful city and a lush forest in the same day. It's a place where behind your house there's an open frontier just waiting to be explored. It's a place where no matter where you are, the beautiful view brings people together. It's a place where there is no border between us and nature. That's my Canada.
A place I can call home, where my neighbors live from coast to coast, when even on its worst days, it's still beautiful. Proud to wear the red and white and see the puck go in the net. True north, strong and free. Oh Canada, this is what you mean to me.
All right, so did you hear your code word? How did it go? How did you feel? So put yourself in the shoes of someone who just moved to a new country, okay? So in the case of Canada, right, the way I understand it, so you have different kinds of immigrants, but refugees, which might come to a new country without knowing anything about the language or culture. But you have a lot of immigrants who come from, like, for example, India or something. They learn a trade or they learn some kind of job that has a high need in Canada. And if they find a job in Canada and they pass the English or French exam, then they're allowed to go to Canada. And I don't know all the details on the process, but it's a skills-based immigration in Canada. So those people would already know English or French. That's one thing. But remember, even within Canada, just because Canada is bilingual, that doesn't mean that everyone in Canada speaks both English and French, right? So that's why you have such a division. We're going to look more into that in just a second, between these two different types of Canadians, really. You have English-speaking Canadians and the French-speaking Canadians. And then you have immigrant communities, which are trying to fit into one or the other. So you always think about how another person feels. We have plenty of people in the United States. In fact, the United States is the country that welcomes the most immigrants every year. And because of that, you think of the people that come to our country and they don't know much about our country, right? They don't know how to fit in. So to us, maybe they seem weird or different, but they're just new. They're just new here, right? And so, of course, they're going to feel out of place. And we need to welcome them and understand that it takes time to learn the customs and culture of a new country, right? And of course, they contribute to Canada's greatness. They contribute to they're a new, in a way, Canadian culture. And they do the same here in America too. They contribute to our greatness and they contribute to a new American culture. So we can also talk about the push and pull factors, like for a refugee, why they would want to leave their country. So the push from a refugee, or for a refugee from their country, would be like war or something like that, where they're in danger. And then they come to the pull factor is, well, why did they choose Canada? Well, because there are lots of communities that have people that speak the same language as them. So a lot of French-speaking immigrants or refugees will probably choose Canada so they can go to Quebec, right? A lot of English-speaking ones would go to a different part of Canada, or they may come to the U.S. But they would come here because it's peaceful, right here, I guess, being Canada, U.S., because more peaceful than where they're coming from, and also more jobs, maybe their family lives here, something like that. So that is a pull factor. Why did they choose Canada? Why did they choose the U.S., right? And then we talked about visas already. So there's a story I have to tell you. So I spent New Year's 2000, well, this past December, January, whatever you want to call it, I spent New Year's in Canada. And I stayed at an Airbnb for 3 nights. First 2 nights, it was just me. And there was a snowstorm on my third night there. And there was somebody who was just passing through. I don't know the whole story. I don't really know him. But he was from India. And he was passing, I think he was moving from like the Toronto area to another town called Thunder Bay. And in the middle is where he stopped, which is where I was. And he stayed at the same Airbnb. And like I said, there was a snowstorm. And for some reason, he had parked his car right behind mine, which no big deal. In the morning, I was leaving first. So we had to wake him up and say, hey, could you move your car? He's like, sure, no problem. Well, he backs out the car and gets stuck in the deep snow. And long story short, he basically doesn't have any idea how to get out of this situation where he's deep into the snow with his car. So, but to me, who I grew up in Illinois, we get snow all the time, and to the host of the Airbnb, we were both a little bit frustrated because it's just kind of like, well, why don't you know how to do this? Obviously, he doesn't know because he's new to the country. He's recently immigrated to Canada and has probably never really driven on snow or ice or has very little experience. Anyway, it can be within the same country, right? So I'm from Illinois. So let's say somebody moves from New York City to Illinois, where I'm from. Well, we get lots of tornadoes there, okay? But if you are from an area where you don't get tornadoes and you move to an area where you do, suddenly the tornado sirens go off and you have no idea what to do, right? This is a big problem. Same thing with anybody who moves from like Washington State or somewhere like that on the West Coast, moves to Houston, okay, or somewhere in the Gulf. Well, guess what? Now they have to deal with hurricanes, right? So, that's a problem, is kind of like this cultural knowledge that is specific to a region, okay, not even necessarily a country. So we just have to take that into consideration. Okay, so moving on. The other thing is Quebec, right? They speak French. They are very proud of their French language and their French culture. And so they wanted sovereignty, which means they wanted to make their own country. So they voted a few different times. And let's go ahead and watch this video about what happened in 1995. Let's go ahead and take a look at this video and think about, what do you think the outcome was? Did they vote, yes, let's become our own country, or did they vote, no, let's stay part of Canada?
Acceptez-vous que le Québec devienne souverain? Ce sera ça, la question. Et il y aura oui ou non.
On vous demande de prendre votre passeport canadien et de le mettre sur la table.
Sovereignty first, sovereignty forever.
Avez-vous trouvé une seule bonne raison, une seule raison valable pour briser le Canada?
Voted 50.6% no, 49.4% yes.
C'est vrai qu'on a été battu au fond par quoi? Par l'argent puis des votes ethniques.
All right, so what do you think? Well, the answer was no. They did not become their own country. It was very, very close, but they did not become their own country. And as a result, they ended up, well, in fact, the answer was always no. So this is 1998, but they voted multiple times. It was always no. So eventually they being Canada, they created the Clarity Act, which basically defined the way that a part of Canada can leave Canada, because other provinces had also been like, well, you know what, if Quebec leaves, then we're leaving too, kind of thing. And so they made all these rules. It has to be clearly worded. Provinces or parts of provinces can separate. Has to be a majority of eligible voters, not just simple whoever voted making the decision. It has to be a percentage of the total people who could have voted. And then in the end, the Constitution would need to be amended. There are more details, of course. But you can compare this to the United States. We are indivisible. We do not, as a country, we don't admit that it's possible to break up into pieces. Okay, we fought a war about that, the Civil War, where the South tried to separate, and we said, no, we can't separate. We need to stay together. Okay, and then Article 4 of the Constitution, I mean, it doesn't directly say you can't separate, but it says that there must be an agreement between states and the Congress. And there is legal precedent to suggest that you cannot separate from the United States, meaning you can't form your own country as a part of it. However, remember, we are founded really on the Declaration of Independence, which stated that it is an inalienable right, which means that every single person in the entire world is born with the right to create their own government, should they believe and have a reason to think that their government is being oppressive. So that, according to our founding document, the Declaration of Independence, continues to stand. But there's no legal means to separate from the United States. So anytime anyone's like, oh, Texas should become its own country, or California should become its own country, or something like that, well, technically, probably you would have to fight a war for that, because there's no legal means of becoming a separate country. All right, well, that is all for today. So thanks a lot for watching. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.